Two highly anticipated cruise ships launched in early 2024, and their journeys to setting sail speak volumes about the state of the now booming cruise industry. Icon of the Seas was one of the most anticipated ships of the past few years and had its inaugural cruise on time in January, with all its facilities and amenities available from day one. A lot of loyal Princess cruisers were also looking forward to the launch of Sun Princess, but they had to wait a while since the inaugural sailing was postponed twice, with only a few days' notice. And when it did finally set sail, several advertised features weren't ready, and wouldn't be ready for more than a month in some cases. One controversial amenity never opened and had to be dismantled because it couldn't pass safety inspections. In this episode of The Chill Cruiser, I'll walk you through the fascinating journeys of these billion-dollar ships and what they reveal about the cruise industry heading into 2025 and beyond. Hey cruisers, Andrew from Ottawa, Canada here. Welcome to The Chill Cruiser, where I review cruise ships from a chill perspective. Today I'm going to do something different and explore the journeys of two high-profile ships that launched in 2024 and what they reveal about the cruise industry in 2025 and beyond. Both ships are the first in a new class, both are powered by liquefied natural gas, and both feature a large dome structure at or close to the bow. But that's pretty much where the similarities end. The first ship, Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas, was one of the most hyped and highly anticipated new cruise ships in years. The other, Sun Princess, didn't have the same high-powered marketing machine, but its striking new design did pique the curiosity of many loyal Princess cruisers. Icon launched on time with all of its promised features open from day one. Sun's first two inaugural sailings were canceled at the last minute, one with only 4 days of notice. And when it did finally start sailing, it was incomplete, with several amenities and shows not available. Although I haven't sailed on Icon yet, I did spend a few weeks on Sun this past fall, and it still felt like an incomplete ship most of the time, with amenities closed, many facilities broken, and construction happening all over the top decks. The design of the ships themselves, their itineraries, and the way they were launched reveal a lot of interesting insights about their parent companies, the cruise industry overall, and what to expect in the years ahead. I'll explore 8 of these trends as I go through their two very different journeys. Icon and Sun were two of more than 10 cruise ships that launched in 2024. So that's the first trend, which is that cruise lines are investing billions of dollars in new ships, and many more are on the way, with 14 expected in 2025, including the sister ships of Icon and Sun. Ironically, both will share the same name, Star of the Seas and Star Princess. Like their sister ships, both will be powered by liquefied natural gas, which brings us to another cruise trend, which is that cruise lines are also investing billions in more sustainable sailing. Most of the major cruise lines have set a goal to achieve net zero by 2050, which means the total amount of their greenhouse gas emissions will be equal to the amount that they've removed. Most ships launching over the next few years will be powered by LNG, which reduces emissions and prepares the ship to be able to use more sustainable fuels, like biofuels, when they become more widely available. They'll also have the capability to connect to shore power facilities and ports that support it, which allows the ship's engines to be turned off while docked. The number of ports that are equipped to support onshore power is unfortunately small, but growing. To find out which ones, you can find a link in the description or check out my website, thechillcruiser.blog. Royal Caribbean announced the main features of Icon in the fall of 2022, and the ship has been the talk of the industry ever since, getting more buzz and attention than any ship I've seen since I started cruising over a decade ago. Not all of the attention was positive because of the ship's massive size, but it certainly got people talking. Royal opted to double down on the success of its Oasis-class ships by making Icon bigger and laser-focused on families. They position it as the ultimate multi-generational family destination with the largest water park at sea, multiple pools for kids and adults, more family-friendly staterooms, themed bars and restaurants, and dramatic Instagram-friendly spaces. This positioned Royal Caribbean well to target the growing trend of multi-generational family travel. According to the Cruise Lines International Association, a third of cruisers now travel as part of a family with at least 2 generations. Royal also took their already famous entertainment to the next level with a bigger and enclosed aqua theater dome complex with a 50-foot waterfall. They also announced Icon would stage the full Broadway production of The Wizard of Oz. And to make it even more irresistible, they added a resident golden retriever named Rover. Princess, which has traditionally been a more premium, adult-oriented cruise line, went in a very different direction with Sun Princess. Even though the last 2 ships in its Royal class received mostly rave reviews, they decided to start from scratch with a completely new design called Sphere Class that's 25% bigger and features a dramatic dome-shaped solarium at the front of the ship that can host acrobatic performances at night. Princess also modernized its cabin design and significantly expanded the number of specialty restaurants. Closer to the scheduled launch of the ship, Princess announced a new all-inclusive premium experience called the Sanctuary Collection with a dedicated restaurant and sun deck. They also announced a completely new family activity complex called Park 19 with a roll glider, rope walkways, and a climbing wall, which was a huge departure from the more adult-oriented amenities on past Princess ships. Loyal cruisers and industry watchers were curious to see how this very different direction would all play out. With Icon, Royal Caribbean also made where it does and doesn't sail part of its appeal. They opted for Icon to sail in the Caribbean year-round out of Miami, with every itinerary including a stop at their popular private island, Perfect Day at Coco Cay. Most major cruise lines have a private island that usually features a beach with bars and limited activities like horseback riding or zip lines. Where Royal Caribbean has led the industry is taking that concept up 100 notches by making it an exclusive beach resort with areas for families and adults. They invested $250 million in Perfect Day, which features a massive water park, multiple beaches, pools, cabanas, bars, and restaurants. Some of these features are included in your cruise fare, while many others are available for an extra fee. Sometimes a very hefty fee that people seem to be willing to pay. The concept has been so successful that Royal Caribbean is creating another Perfect Day in Mexico that's set to open in 2027. They also recently opened an all-inclusive private beach club in Nassau that's available as a for-fee excursion, with another one coming in Cozumel in 2026. This has forced other cruise lines to up their private destination game. Carnival Corporation, which owns the Carnival brand as well as Princess and many others, has multiple private islands including Princess Cays, which is where Sun will call on during some, but not all of its Caribbean itineraries. But like most of Carnival Corp's private islands, it doesn't have a pier, so ships have to run tender boats to the island, while Perfect Day has a large pier that allows two of its largest ships to dock at the same time. Carnival Corp has responded by investing in a new private island experience for Carnival branded ships called Celebration Cay that'll try to rival the amenities of Perfect Day. They're also expanding and rebranding the island that used to be exclusively for Holland America itineraries to allow multiple brands and ships to call on the island at the same time. Half Moon Cay will become Relax Away at Half Moon Cay. Although they're building a pier, it looks like it'll only be able to accommodate one ship. If another ship is visiting the island on the same day, they'll still need to anchor and shuttle guests on tender boats. Home porting year-round in Miami allows Icon to stop at Perfect Day on every sailing, but it also allows the ship to tap into growing demand for Caribbean cruises. Most North American cruise lines are doubling down on Caribbean itineraries and expanding capacity in more ports throughout Florida, like Port Canaveral, where the other ship that Royal Caribbean launched in 2024, Utopia of the Seas, is now sailing year-round. More on that later. Norwegian Cruise Line recently canceled more than 50 cruises in 2025 and 2026 so that they could redeploy several ships back to the Caribbean. Another benefit from sailing the Caribbean year-round is that ships don't need to do the costly and time-consuming repositioning cruise to Europe in the summer, which is the traditional approach to new ships that Sun Princess is following. Revenue optimization is another emerging trend in the cruising industry that appears to have been borrowed from the airlines, which have been optimizing revenue for decades by not only focusing on more fuel-efficient aircraft, but also squeezing more seats into the cabin and, as we all know, charging for privileges like flight changes and bags. Norwegian has been in the news recently for making several major last-minute itinerary changes that many affected guests have speculated have been to optimize fuel, including quietly removing Antarctica from an Antarctic cruise after it already started. Royal invested a significant amount of resources in promoting Icon. Aside from the usual ship renderings, their launch videos had a fun, edgy, fast-paced theme with dance music aimed very clearly at younger audiences. At the launch event, they revealed only 20% of the ship's venues and announced new bars, restaurants, and shows in installments leading up to the first sailing. They also produced a slick 16-episode Making an Icon video series on top of the usual milestone announcements to maintain interest over the several months leading up to the ship's launch. Even though Sun Princess seemed to be taking the brand in a very different direction, Princess stuck with the traditional ship marketing playbook, announcing most of the ship's main features up front and emphasizing its design elements while waiting until closer to the launch to announce specialty restaurant partnerships with Love by Brito and Spellbound. So how are these two ships with very different approaches to design and marketing received? Well, Royal Caribbean broke multiple sales records when reservations opened for Icon. They had the most sales for a new ship in a single day and a single week, while Princess hasn't shared any sales data specific to Sun. What we do know is that cabins for its inaugural sailings in Europe were available until up to a few weeks prior to departure, before they were canceled, of course. and that Princess saw the need to produce an ad several months after the ship launched, featuring Sun's godmother, Anna Waddington. As a member of Princess's Casino Rewards program, I was also able to sail on Sun for several weeks in a free cabin, and I met a lot of fellow gamblers on board who were able to do the same thing. When and in what state Icon and Sun started sailing is another interesting part of the story. Icon was built by Meyer Turku in Turku, Finland, which has built several of Royal's Oasis-class ships and was delivered on time. Royal Caribbean was able to reposition the ship to North America and host several shakedown and preview sailings with travel agents and media prior to the first official sailing on January 27th, which was when Icon was christened by soccer superstar Lionel Messi. All of its amenities were open, and aside from a few minor glitches like the Wizard of Oz having to be cut short, the first couple of sailings went smoothly. The ship did have some propulsion issues several months later, which meant that it had to skip a scheduled stop and cancel an entire cruise in September. Sun Princess was built by Fincantieri in Monfalcone, Italy, which has built most of the ships not just in the Princess fleet, but across the fleets of the many brands of parent company Carnival Corporation, including Carnival, Holland America, and Costa. Where Royal Caribbean's parent company seems to use several shipbuilders to make its ships, Carnival Corp seems to primarily rely on one. Sun was the largest ship that Fincantieri had ever built, and it was scheduled to have its inaugural sailing only a few days after Icon's in early February in Civitavecchia, a few hundred miles away from the shipyard. Princess canceled that cruise with only a few weeks' notice, and then canceled the next cruise with only 4 days' notice, saying the ship still wasn't ready. When the ship did finally enter service on February 28th, the Park 19 complex was closed, and most of the entertainment featured in the ship's marketing was noticeably missing. The ship wouldn't have its full entertainment lineup available for several weeks, and in some cases, months. When I was on the ship in August and September, most of the shows were running, but the Park 19 complex was still closed, and there was disruptive construction and maintenance work happening all over the ship. In a major embarrassment, Park 19 couldn't pass safety inspections, so it never opened, and it was dismantled while I was on board, which meant the entire deck along with the jogging track had to be closed for close to 2 weeks with no advance notice. Instead of canceling more cruises to finish all the work and host preview sailings, Princess decided to do both with paying guests on board. When Sun overnighted in Southampton prior to its maiden transatlantic, they hosted a travel agent and influencer event on board, while they literally rolled out the red carpet and treated them like VIPs, while paying guests could watch from the piazza. Princess has also received a lot of flack for Sun's design. Even though it's 25% bigger than its previous ships and accommodates more than 500 more people, Princess shrank several key venues like the main theater and the gym to be the smallest in the fleet, which has caused a lot of lineups and frustration. So how were Icon and Sun received? Cruise Critics editors gave Icon a 4.5-star rating. Because the entertainment wasn't ready when they were on board Sun, Cruise Critic very generously opted to postpone providing a rating until they went back on board a few months later, when they eventually gave it 4 stars. The average cruiser rating of Icon is 3.6, while Sun is just above 3, which is consistent with my experience on board and what I heard from fellow cruisers. New cruisers seem to be enjoying Sun the most. When I asked loyal Princess cruisers what they thought of the ship, they usually had a conflicted look and had to pause to collect their thoughts. "I love this cruise" is a tagline you see everywhere on the ship, but I couldn't find many people who actually did love the ship. Princess has definitely disappointed a lot of loyal cruisers, and I heard more than one guest characterize Sun as the sign of an identity crisis. Because of Icon's massive popularity, the ship demands a heavy premium compared to Royal Caribbean's other newer ships, which only increases already high expectations. Interior cabins on Icon were between $500 and $1,000 more expensive per person than similar itineraries on slightly older ships like Harmony and Wonder of the Seas for sailings in February 2025. Not surprisingly, this is not the case on Sun Princess. Interior cabins during the same time period were going for the same price as Caribbean Princess, which is more than 20 years old. 10-day cruises on Enchanted Princess, one of the newer ships in the fleet with high ratings, were going for more than triple the price, with most sailings already sold out. The one bright spot on Sun Princess seems to be the all-inclusive Sanctuary Collection offering, which was either sold out or almost sold out on every sailing. Princess seems to be focusing on value across all of its ships, with all-inclusive packages that cover internet, gratuities, drinks, and more for a significantly lower amount per day than you would pay if you were buying them separately. This is a huge contrast to Royal Caribbean, which won't reveal any package pricing until after you've booked your cruise. Both ships are benefiting from surging demand for cruises, which is triggering higher prices. Demand was forecast to increase 9% in 2024 and 7% in 2025, but it's likely the actual increases will be much higher based on the earnings announcements from the cruise lines. Both Royal Caribbean Group and Carnival Corporation have had to update their earnings guidance several times over the past year and have boasted to analysts about full ships and rising prices. Carnival said on its last earnings call in December that 75% of the cabins on 2025 sailings have already been sold. Although it seems like every cruise line is benefiting from this rising demand, the journeys of Icon and Sun tell you a lot about who's really winning. Royal Caribbean has three main brands: Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, and Silversea, each with a very clear idea of their target audience, with experiences and marketing that cater to those audiences. They also know how to launch new ships on time. They successfully launched Utopia of the Seas later in 2024 with 3 to 4 day itineraries that also stop at Perfect Day. Royal marketed Utopia as the world's biggest weekend, catering to fun-loving adults and their families. Its inaugural sailing also went ahead on time and was christened by pop star Meghan Trainor. Carnival has a whopping 9 brands worldwide and feels a bit like the old GM when they sold the same car under several different brands. Like the Pontiac Sunfire and the Chevrolet Cavalier, Carnival has P&O Cruises UK and P&O Cruises Australia, which operate as completely separate companies and brands, while ships from several other Carnival Corp brands like Carnival, Princess, and Holland America also sail throughout the UK and Australia. The contrast between the massively successful launch of Icon and the botched launch of Sun makes it pretty clear that Carnival Corp is falling behind, and the market seems to agree. Even though Carnival is the world's largest cruise line and has the most ships, Royal Caribbean is more profitable, and their stock is performing exponentially better. Royal Caribbean's much higher stock price means the company's value, or market capitalization, is currently double that of Carnival's. But Carnival seems to be waking up to this reality. John Paget, the president of Princess, left the company at the end of the year and was replaced by Holland America's president, Gus Santorka. Celebration K is scheduled to launch in July 2025, and the expanded Half Moon K is scheduled to be ready in the summer of 2026. Carnival also announced they would be retiring the P&O Cruises Australia brand in March 2025 and transferring 2 of the brand's ships to Carnival. They've also transferred 3 Costa branded ships to the Carnival fleet. So what are the main takeaways from all this? First, if you're planning on taking a cruise in 2025 and you haven't booked it yet, do it soon because the demand is going up and cabins are running out. So that means prices will only get higher. Second is that Royal Caribbean's newest ships and private destinations are where to go if you want to experience the future of cruising, but you'll pay a premium for it. And third, if you really want to be on the inaugural sailing of Star Princess, have an open mind and make sure all of your travel bookings are fully refundable. After more than 50 cruises, I've learned a lot of ways to save time, money, and grief while traveling. You can check out my top 10 tips here. Thank you for watching, and happy cruising.